welcome to the Tunde Learning Your podcast. This is the Nigerian Theatre Witnesses to History, and our guest is the erudite and world-famous Professor Segun Ojewuyi. What prompted his relocation to the United States of America? How did that watershed in Nigeria's history, the June 12 election, how did it affect the position and the location of Segun Ojewuyi? We'll hear of these and more as Segun continues to witness to us in the history of the Nigerian theatre and what we can do to bring some of the things that we need to grow in the Nigerian theatre up to par. Let's hear more from Professor Segun Ojewuyi.
94 or 90, I cannot remember it. We had the 60th birthday celebration for Wole Soyinka.
Okay.
Akinwumi Shola, Professor Akinwumi Shola, late, had just translated Death and the King's Horseman to Yoruba. There was a committee planning the festival. The chair of that committee was Chief Bola Ige. It also had Femi Oshofsan, Professor Oshofsan, and Yemi Ogunbiyi, Odia Ofemu, and some other, associates of Soyinka, business people, professionals. And in short, I was invited to direct the festival production. So they had the debate on which one to. They decided to use Akinwumi Shola's Yoruba version as the festival production. And I was invited to direct it. For me, it was a major affirmation because, I told myself I had persuaded them through my work or somehow I was competent enough in my Yoruba culture to handle that.
Yeah.
I called it not a translation, I called it a retrieval. Back to where it came from.
Yeah.
Yes. And you remember what I told you about the Yoruba language in the play that I immediately saw?
Yes.
It's also fascinating.
Death and the King's Horseman.
Yes. So I went, and I then went to the Ife. The company there with Kola Oyewo, Peter Fatomilola, Laide Adewale, Ojetunji, Ojeyemi, that core, because their facility with the English language and Yoruba excellent, because they came from, so that formed the core of that performance, of that production. Ayo Oluwasomi was Joseph. So that was another signature production. So I immediately, and I have to state this way, it made me the only director who had directed the play in both languages.
Yeah, Yoruba and English.
And that was the last production.
Was that the only time you directed the Yoruba?
That's the only time. I'm still looking forward to, a second go at it, and it will be something else. I directed Death and the King's Horseman in the U.S. in St. Louis at the Black Repertory Theater, and people were always like, this play, they will read it and enjoy it, and they will feel the impulse to stage it, but they'll be afraid because the competency, with the culture and the language was always so. The artistic director of the theater and its board were like, I hope people will understand this, and we know we love parts of it, but we don't quite. Don't worry, I'll do my best. But when it came, I still have the reviews. One of the best reviews I've seen. It says, Ojewuyi stages a hurricane.
A hurricane. That was awesome.
Awesome, and it was a clear understanding of the play itself. And Soyinka has seen 3 productions of mine of that,
interpretation of the play
of mine, and every time he kind of just loved it. So that's the Ikolo Convention was the last production before
You moved to the US.
And at that point, that's another story. The country was going through the Abiola, Abacha, phase.
June 12.
June 12.
And Nadeko.
I was working for the information service, so I became a target. Because I was staging, in fact, it was so bad that we were not sure we were going to stage Ikolo Kwenshi because it was during the rehearsal. So they felt we were really talking to them. They felt, I was also writing in the Vanguard and the Guardian at the time. So they put together, I became a target. And I began to, for the first time, think about leaving the country. 2 personal episodes, triggered the final move. I've shared this story with you. The key actors in this story. He lives very close by. Going to have his first child. We're all young, strapping men in Ibadan. It was just a freelance director, producer with the television. So we had to go to Adeoyo or which other one, hospital with the baby. Anyway, the point was we were asked to go get water. So the Merua, everything went smoothly. We all then somehow migrated to Lagos. We're professionals now. And one night, another friend of that small group, his wife was having a baby at Ainke.
Oh, in Lagos?
In Lagos. So, to go and all of that, was afraid because, first year we didn't. And then we were asked to go fetch water.
In Lagos too?
This was 10 years after.
Wow.
So I told myself, we had not even developed. We were not on the same floor. We had regressed 10 years. That was another touch of perhaps this. And then there was one thing that tipped it. I was well paid at the embassy, very well paid. I had my first child and my second was on the way. I took money, at that time, it was a lot of money, close to $1 million. I called a friend who worked at IMB. Said I wanted to invest because I was thinking of my children. He said I should wait for him. That when he closed that work, he would join me. We'll go somewhere and we'll talk. So we did that. And the bottom line, what he said to me, he asked me one question: what economy was Nigeria built on? Nigerian economy, what was the foundation, the core? I said, well, oil. He said, yes, that's what everybody, would say, and it's the only one. He said, but the oil itself is not an industry. It doesn't manufacture anything. So it doesn't, actually generate wealth.
It doesn't.
He said that we are only drilling, which just like we are the laborers who would dig it and give it to them. And then we would buy it back. He said, so there's no economy. Oh. I said, So we don't make anything. We don't make cars. We don't provide our own electricity. We don't, He just broke it down. I said, why are you doing this? He said, because you're my friend. So let me tell you the side of the bank. I will take your money. I will be well paid for bringing this money into the system. We would pay you some dividend in a few months or something and all of that. But we would be paying you that dividend from someone else's money.
Because there's no productivity
so
anywhere.
So we're merely recycling. I said, so how do people make it? He said, go and build a house in one of the neighborhoods and rent it out. He said, I become a slumlord. So those episodes informed me that it was time to get out. And so I went back to something I mentioned earlier, to Olarotimi and Carol Dawes. So, okay, if I was going to leave the country and I had built my career to this level, I would have to start again in that new country. And how could I ensure that I had access to about the same level as I had attained here? I decided I had to go to school and go to that school.
Yale.
That Yale, where those two people, came from. And that's what I did. It was the only place I applied for, and I was invited to come over for the audition interview. They sent scripts. You got there. They had actors waiting for you, and they sat in the back of the hall and gave you 2 hours while they observed. And then you got a break. They dismissed the actors, and they took you through another hour of discussion, conversation over dramatic literature, theater, everything. There's more to brag about, but I will just leave that.
Wow. So Yale, jewel
Yes.
of theater, because they've had so many people impacting
Yes.
theater arts over decades. Who was your motivation aside in the place that you somehow thought, I want to be like this, I want to beat?
You ask the questions, and then you open up this well of stories. I mentioned earlier that I got an international visitors grant from the US that took me to the US for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And that we met, it was a group of theater directors from 10 countries, but the others were from Europe and then Israel, on that trip, one director who had just won an Obie or something, or Tony, was one we met, was a female. And there's a playwright now, female playwright, Susan Laurie Parks.
Yeah.
That was her first outing, that big. She's very big now. And so the two of them, she is the playwright, an African American, and the director, a white American, both female. It was unusual. So they were two of the people we met. Then with the two of them, I went on lunch, as a special, and we got talking, we got, close. So that was it. I came back. I went for the interview. I went to the school. I got into the classroom. Classes continued about 3 weeks or 4 weeks or maybe even longer. I was now rifling through the few pictures that I took from home, from Nigeria with me, and I saw this picture. And there was my professor with me. It was the woman I had met there.
Ooh.
Was now my professor. Because Yale does not employ theorists. You must be professionals with some measurable credit. They are like Broadway and the big regional theaters with awards, and so that's a conservatory. That's the might there. She became a model for me, just like Carol does. The other person was Ben Mordecai. He was the one teaching theater management.
Right.
But his major credit was, I say was because he's dead now, was a Broadway producer.
He was.
August Wilson, a playwright, who's like their Shakespeare there, or showing card there, is also dead. He produced all of the plays from August Wilson on Broadway, and all of August Wilson's plays went to Broadway. He was that successful, that big, that mighty. So Ben Mordecai was the other inspiration for me, a director and a producer. I was like, okay, this is the place. And Yale was incredible. The third person is just also died recently, Min-Cho Lee, Chinese American scenic designer. If you mention Min-Cho Lee's name in America, in the theater world, people stopped and bowed. That's like, we used to have these 6 hours on Saturdays in the design class with all the design students and the directors together. So in those three, I just fed and fed and fed and fed.
Those were some of the things we learned from diploma in Ibadan, that you were supposed to have meetings with all the various departments of a production, which mostly now are not being followed.
They're not followed. I remember when I first got to England, to the UK, and then I attended. It was called first design meeting, and then it evolved into a production meeting. The design phase was all, and I was sitting there like, I was thinking, why are they taking all this trouble? They'll bring, if I said I wanted a danshiki or a buba, they say, okay, what color? Then I say, I want blue. Then they bring you 1,000 shades of blue.
Blue.
And they bring you swabs of them so you can touch the fabric and know exactly what. And then the lighting person is saying, okay, this would, take in the light, or this will repel the light, and this color will not be, and the scenic designer would be telling you, no, if I put this, it's similar to what's on television, that, black and white in those days would just flush.
Yeah.
So, I need to have this contrast. And then you'll be talking about literature, the symbolic interpretation of that color, of that texture, of that height, of that, all of those things. I was like, oh wow, so this is the reason why. We never did that here. And you would have the models.
Yeah.
Models, like miniature of every part. So for me, I developed this habit, which was own the model. I always ask them, do a model for me that I took with me home. So that's where I blocked my singing.
Yeah, you could move the models around. The characters, you can place them and rethink them.
And now in the digital age, I've been thinking, I'm sure it must be in existence already, that there should be an app for directors that just sit, you have the model, done for you, and then you could, move your actors, your characters in that space before you got into rehearsal. That's as far as it's gone.
Yeah.
But it's amazing and incredibly disturbing that that part in this country is still far behind.
Far behind.
The actors,
far behind.
In spite of the shortcomings, actors are far ahead, but they will splash it with red, blue, and all of that. So people will, but strip it of that. The scripts have become somehow.
Yeah.
The actors are the main thing really carrying things, performance. Anyway, let me leave Nigeria alone.
So you then finished in Yale. What was your production like?
My thesis production at Yale was another showing class play, The Road. And I actually stole back to Nigeria to do a production research for The Road. The old Oshodi, with all the,
people on the streets,
that was
the downfalls, the Molues.
Everything. That was my setting for The Road. I took pictures, videos, and my designer saw it and just, whoa, that place, said that. Say, yeah, I can read it here, and now I see it. Say, now design. So, we built that crossroad, we built that Oshodi on stage.
Oshodi on stage?
Yes.
Wow.
We brought sand, onto the stage and treated it for the dust and for the infection.
Yeah.
But it was pure sand, so it was that crass. And when the professor, this white guy stood in the midst of all of that, you could see The Road. That was my production. And the story about that was, every time, this is the thing, as a director, an African working in the West, the process of directing every production was also an intense process of teaching.
Teaching, yeah. Actually, I was just going to say, and you were using non-Nigerians as your actors.
Yes.
Who didn't understand the culture or the context of The Road.
So every time I had to take them through that first. And it meant a number of things. It meant first breaking down their preformed conceptions and worldview, tampering with it, reshaping it, not destroying it, because these worldviews are built on and certain ethics and all, and they actually meet at some point, and you find out, oh, we call it this here, it's called that, but it's the same thing. So you just help them reshape it and strengthen it, locate it in the African culture. And mine is Yoruba. So I'm always going to the Yoruba culture all the time. And then the physical construct is another one. Because the actor's body is his major tool.
Yeah.
And they perform on the Western stage. It has its own nuance and its dictates in structure the structure of the body, the movement.
Yeah.
So I always had to reshape that.
Redirect
Yes.
the way they use their bodies.
Because the way you move in space,
their mimes,
all
their gestures, and all
yes,
things like
and
that.
facial expressions, and points of exclamation and commas, pause, and what they mean. I'll give you an example. Very basic. Yoruba dance is always, the body
moving forward
to closer to the earth, and that's where we dance with that. So there's a commune with the earth and with the universe. I found out Western dance is almost always leaping in a straightforward yes,
in the air,
which in modernist terms is reaching for the Christian height of where our gods
we propitiate.
So I had to begin to understand, why do we dance like that? Why do they dance? So it always meant bringing them together. Sometimes they would embrace and go into this spiritual or historical realm of slavery and become so. You have to bring them down to a balance, where it all. But the discoveries have always been extraordinarily informative and fulfilling.
It's been an exciting journey with Professor Segun Ojewuyi, from a young lad who participated by accident in a Yoruba theatre production to the Dean of Arts and Humanities in a university in the United States of America. His work on Broadway, collaboration with various artists, including on the Shakespeare Theatre. Segun has done everything that you can do and is yearning to do more. Keep on looking out for such people who have impacted the Nigerian theatre in the last couple of decades on different episodes of the Nigerian theatre Witnesses to History that will be brought to you from the Tunde Laniyan podcast. We also look forward to bringing to you such people that Segun mentioned during his interview. People like Richard Mufedamijo, Segun Arinze, Esther Roberts, and Dede Babiabu. Until we come back with another personality next episode, who is in fact a multi-talented, multifaceted artist. He's not only participated in various aspects of theatre, he was in fact one of those who participated in the Festac 77 as part of the Nigerian contingent. Now is a world-acclaimed artist. I'm talking of Otumba Tunde Odunlade. He will be our next guest on the Nigerian Theatre Witnesses to History on the Tunde Laniyan podcast next week at the same time. Thank you.